morning. Thank you for joining us for another of the Mike's Moments. I'm here with Mike Arnold, owner of the Mike Arnold Agency. I'm Greg.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mike. I want to talk to you a little bit today about the benefit of being an independent agent and pros and cons of that. So let's just jump right off and give me a couple pros of being an independent agent, please.
There's a lot. And in our history of the agency, we were a captive agent for years, and then that relationship changed, thankfully, and we're now an independent agent. So I've seen both sides of it. And right out of the gate, I would say you have multiple carriers to choose from. That's a huge pro. You're not married to one horse, so to speak. And every carrier that provides property and casualty insurance in Virginia, they do home, they do auto. So what's the difference? Well, each carrier has a desired sweet spot. They're all good at something, but you can't be good at everything. So they're better in some areas and not. And being an independent, when we see a client or a potential client and we're working with them, we have the ability to tailor a program with a carrier that best fits that profile. Whereas a captive agent, that old analogy of pounding a square peg into a round hole, they're trying to make everything fit with one carrier. And that's a big pro for us. It's a big pro for the consumer because we have the ability to shop it.
Would you say that is for both personal and commercial clients?
It's probably, it's strong in both, but it's probably even stronger with commercial because most of the time, unless there's something from an underwriting standpoint, usually your best bet with personal lines is to have everything with one carrier. That's not the case, as you well know, with commercial insurance because the risks vary so much. Many times the best fit is to piecemeal an account with different carriers.
Talk to us just briefly about how market conditions affect our ability as an independent agency to work with clients.
And that's something that's it could go as a con because you have to be abreast of many things with many carriers as the market conditions change. But I really see it as a pro as to being an independent agent because when you are an independent agent and you're doing a good job, you've got to keep abreast of these changes. And we've had a lot of change in the property and casualty insurance industry in the last 3 years. But carriers are making changes to their guidelines, to their appetite, what's acceptable risk, and we've got to be in tune with that and know it. And it forces us, I believe, in my opinion, to have a better understanding of what's going on in the market. Whereas when you're a captive agent and you're tied to one horse, whatever they say is gospel. And you, in my opinion, it's arguable, but in my opinion, you don't have as much of an in-depth understanding of what's going on in the marketplace when you're only tied to one carrier. When you're directly appointed with numerous carriers and they're all reacting differently to the set of circumstances that's in the marketplace right now, it really paints a picture. And that picture is different here in Central Virginia than what it is down on the coast than what it is in Northern Virginia. It changes geographically. So I think it's a huge positive. It's more work, but you really know a better understanding of what's going on in the marketplace.
Do you find as a result that we're getting more competition? That is, all of these carriers are trying to win our business, so they're more likely to listen to us and move. Secondly, do you see a difference between regional carriers and national carriers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a different relationship. A captive agent, it is what it is. And what corporate says is what you're going with. When you're an independent agent, the dynamic is that competition is a two-way street. And the carriers are competing for the business inside our agency. So in my opinion, we have found that they're much more receptive to inputs. It doesn't mean we can just make anything happen, by no means, but they're more willing to listen and make an accommodation if the circumstances dictate it. And that goes into the quality of our work and the quality of the risk that we present. We have a certain kind of client that we're looking for in this agency, and it's that helps me when I go to present it to a carrier. if something doesn't quite fit in the box. So they're much more receptive than a captive agent in my experience and in my opinion, because with a captive and corporate, it is what it is.
Do you find that that's similar with even their pay plans?
Yes, because all carriers have a variety of pay plans, but we now have numerous carriers, and the policy periods are different. Auto policies, some have annual policies, and some are still restricted to only 6 months. But some carriers offer a substantial discount for paid in full, whereas others just give a little bit of a discount. So all of these things, and it goes back to looking at the risk and what's the best fit for that client as far as what carrier and what they're willing to do. If somebody's not willing to pay for the whole year, then that's really not that important. But if somebody does have that ability and wants to appreciate that discount, then that enters into the conversation. And then you mentioned the difference between regional and national carriers. We have found, in our opinion, that regional carriers are much more flexible. And because of that, they are not as stringent on the corporate guidelines, so to speak. So if you have something, an example that we've dealt with, a really old church or an old building, historical, different things. Well, a regional carrier, they not only will accept the risk, but they're more flexible because they have the ability to eliminate certain coverages that the client's willing to do that just make it ineligible with a national carrier. So it's, instead of yes or no, it's a no over here for a national carrier, but a regional carrier might say yes, but we need to do this. And the client understands that. So that's a good fit. And it's a nice tool in our bag, that just differentiating between a national carrier and a regional carrier.
As we transition slightly away from pros and before we get to cons, kind of a middle area, I'd like to just talk briefly about how does the agency choose to work with a carrier? How does their financial strength matter when you're choosing? Because there are hundreds of carriers that we do not represent. You've very specifically chosen a specific group to work with. Can you talk what led you down that path? And again, with their financial strength, how that plays?
Yeah, absolutely. So before financial, I would look at geographical. So we're centered. We write the whole state of Virginia, but most of our business is in Central Virginia, which is a different risk profile than if we were down in the Hampton Roads area, which is a different risk profile than if we were in Northern Virginia.
Or Richmond.
But the point is that, so, what's the best fit as far as the geography? And then when I'm evaluating carriers, and clients should do this too, and I tell the public, when you want to know how good an insurance carrier is, look at their AM Best rating, because that really says a lot. And it talks about their financial strength, their ability to pay claims. Are they in trouble? It incorporates claims handling, and it says a lot. So when I see a carrier, and we've had this happen where they've been downgraded, that really raises an eyebrow, and we have to look at what business we have with them and if that's still the best place. And again, it goes back to the beginning, that flexibility, what's best for the client. We're not going to force a square peg into a round hole. We're going to find the best fit.
I appreciate that. Thank you for taking a couple minutes to talk about that. Let's talk about the limited side of the cons of being an independent agent. What's primary in your mind as being a downside for being an independent agent?
A lot would say it's a con, and I'll identify it as such, but ultimately, I think if you deal with the con, it actually turns into a pro. And that is, when you are a captive agent, you've got one set of rules to deal with. You have that one carrier you deal with, and you know their rules, and more than likely you know them. If you've been doing it more than a couple of years, you know their rules forwards and backwards, and when there's a change, it's just one thing you're changing. When you're an independent, you've got to have that same knowledge, but instead of one carrier, it's multiple carriers. And that can be, if you allow it, it can be overwhelming. You got to stay on top of it. But that's a lot of work. But at the same time, I say that actually turns into a pro. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, because dealing with numerous carriers and their underwriting guidelines and the changes to those guidelines, which there has been a lot in this current economy and insurance market, I think it gives you, if you're doing that well, it gives you arguably a much better understanding of what's going on in the overall market than a captive agent. And that knowledge and experience allows you to better serve your client and serve that relationship to provide what's best for them. Because again, we're not going to pound a square peg in a round hole. We understand what's going on in the marketplace, and we're looking in the future, what's the best place for this particular client, this particular risk, whether it's, you know, a home and 2 cars, or a home and car, vacation home, boat, motorcycle, with a business and workers, you know, all these different things, all these variables. Being abreast of what's going on with multiple carriers, we can better serve the client in the marketplace.
So whether an existing client or a potential client, I guess one of the other things would be just quoting. With a single carrier, you can get a quote done much more quickly than if you have multiple. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. When you're a captive agent and you're dealing with one horse, you know, you can generate an auto quote in just a couple of minutes. Same thing with a home. It takes us a little bit longer. I mean, we have software that allows us to quote with multiple carriers, but we still got to go in and tweak it. So the quotes take a little bit longer, but the end result, we have the opportunity to earn a lot more yeses than nos. And again, I think the client always enjoy it when I can lay out options and go, you know, here's good, here's better, and here's best, versus a captive situation where it's, here's my quote.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the client, because everybody on everything likes choices.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and go over this. If they want to reach out to you, Mike, what's the best phone number and email?
Give us a call at 434-295-2692, or you can email us at info@mikearnoldagency.com. We encourage anybody to reach out. We're glad to review your policies, no matter who they're with, because ultimately, with all the different carriers we have, it's still the same mission. We want to protect your current assets and future income with quality service. Thank you.
Thank you.